I'm Daisy.
And I'm Terry.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 119. 19.
Oh, it's me. I'm waiting for you.
It is.
And this week, it's Daisy's turn to share something with us. Daisy, what do you have?
Well, Terry, I am back with an article from a Book Bites article from the Next Big Idea Club. We were talking about newsletters earlier, and this is one of the newsletters that I get that I do actually read. And they often tantalize me with interesting sounding articles that are often useful for this podcast. But this one, I will tell you why this one drew me in. When I lived in France, there was something that the French would say, and I often say this to people now, and you have to say it with a French accent for it to work, and that is courage, which literally translates as courage. But for some reason, and I did actually look it up on Google Translate, and it does just say courage, but there's something more to it. It's something that someone would say if you had, say, a test coming up or something that you were a bit worried about. It just sort of embodies a bit more than courage. And of course, when I write it down, when I want to say it to somebody in a written capacity on Facebook, for example, or something, it's one of the things that was said to me in France that I've adopted. So, I will often say courage, as the French say, but of course it just reads as courage. But like I say, it just somehow embodied more. And this article was about courage, not the French courage, but courage. So that's kind of how it drew me in, because it brought to mind that saying and the embodiment of that word in France. But this is a book bite, and the book in question is the Courage Playbook by Gus Lee. Gus Lee is an ethicist, a leadership trainer, an executive coach, and an author. This Book Bites article is entitled 5 Steps to Overcome Your Fears and Become Your Best Self. I always love that when it's in a title. Who doesn't want to become their best self?
What if I already am?
Exactly. Then maybe this article is not for you, Terry. Now, I did have a few issues with this article overall. There were some sort of nuggets that I take from it and some echoes from things that we've spoken about. I guess I kind of got a little bit of an executive coach, overly masculine vibe from it sometimes. So it didn't gel with all of it, but there were some things I thought that I thought seemed quite useful. So the 5 steps, and he does kind of mix his steps. You'll see a bit later what I mean by that. But number 1, courage makes the biggest difference in the quality of our lives. Without courage, he says, fears get bigger, life gets harder, and contentment becomes elusive. Aristotle, apparently, found that courage was our number 1 ability. Jay and Barry told college graduates that if courage goes, it all goes. Even love, he says, without courage becomes resentment, hurt, and anger. But courage is not about physical bravery, or at least it's not just about physical bravery, and he's not talking about that side of it. He says it's a set of behaviours which start in overcoming your fears to make room for courageous habits. We need courage, he says, because our anxieties want to control us. And then he goes on to, so he sort of, that's the first step, but he hasn't exactly said what the first step is, other really than saying that courage is important. The second step, with the courage to respect all persons, you can snap out of all your fears. And he talks about a client who blamed all his problems on external things and other people. And they rooted out that he actually felt bad because he was being judgmental and disrespectful and quick to anger. And that it was actually fear that motivated him to deny his weaknesses and blame others. And that's a good example of where I felt it was getting a little bit sort of masculine. It made me kind of think if I could sort of imagine him saying that he needed to man up. I don't know, maybe I was reading too much into it, but it rubbed me up a little bit the wrong way. But the solution was that he asked a colleague to help him out by subtly pointing out when he was doing any of what Gus Lee talks about as the 3 no's. And the 3 no's are disrespect, anger, and hideouts. Then he goes on to the third step, which is to demonstrate unconditional positive respect. And he says that courage is neutral to race and gender. It honours all faiths and favours no party. It requires neither unique power, special intelligence, or unusual gifts. And this is where his steps get a little bit confused, because he talks about how you need to practice 3 behaviours, and these are his 3 goes. So he has his 3 no's of disrespect, anger, and hideouts, and his 3 goes. And the first one, this is where it gets a bit confusing, because we have the 1, 2, 3 of his 3 goes, but that also make up the steps 4 and 5. So, perhaps needed to rewrite this article, but the first of the 3 goes, which is part of the third step, is unconditional positive respect, or UPR. And this is basically treating all people with equal regard, regardless of feelings. And without this UPR, we invite racism and bias. Discussions become conflict, work devolves into struggle, relationships turn into arguments, parenting escalates into a war zone. UPR, unconditional positive respect, means having empathy for people who think and act differently and, like you, can make mistakes. And it takes courage to honour people who aren't the same as us. This is where he started to pull me back in a little bit. And I got more interested again in the article. Now, step 4, which is also the second go, is govern yourself. Being considerate and stifling our natural impulse to be self-absorbed. This is where it's a bit like one of those Brene Brown moments where you think, this is maybe going to sound like something I do sometimes. Self-governance is better than self-control or self-discipline, which both smack of punishment and prohibitions. Self-governance, he says, starts by recognizing that we admire people who stay calm under pressure. It also means that you admit that you are the courageous captain of your life and that you are the navigator of your life's path and direction. So it's coming back to that, like the guy he was talking about in the step 2, putting it out on external things and dumping the blame at other people's door. It's really governing yourself and accepting that you're the person who steers the ship. The 5th step and the third go is do the right thing. He says it's Easier to do the right thing when you remember how you don't want to be like somebody else. We all have, I think, that someone or those someones that we cringe when someone says, "Oh, you sound just like so and so." I think we can all picture someone or multiple someones. And so really, that's about it. But overall, practice giving unconditional respect. Captain your emotions and impulses. Try and stop doing the 3 no's. And practice as much as you can the 3 goes. And this will make you more courageous and help strengthen your identity. So I think there are some nuggets in there. You can probably see why some of it sort of rubbed me a little bit up the wrong way, but then other bits I was thinking, oh yes, that sounds familiar, and something we need to think about, and something I need to throw at Terry, who I'm sure will have many more words of wisdom on the subject than Gus Lee did.
I don't.
And perhaps he needs to think about restructuring his article.
Perhaps. I was getting lost in the no's and the go's.
But I guess it's sort of where I started comes back with that point where he mentions about the unconditional positive respect, the having empathy for other people. And I guess that just circled back round to the feeling that I got from the courage, as the French say, I guess had that empathetic quality to it. So I think maybe that, that's what kind of drew me in and circled back around to at the end, this unconditional respect for other people that can help drive your own mood. I've seen that with people who have that negative, always being critical of others, often reflects in how their own mood is, their own behaviors. So starting with having this unconditional respect for other people might help, how you see yourself and your own behavior.
I think what stands out to me, Daisy, as I'm listening to you describe this, is it's not a typical how to do something versus more, and maybe I'm missing this, but it sounds almost like it's giving us a moral compass kind of approach to how we can listen better, respect more, lead people, work with people.
Yes, that's why I got confused with the 5 steps that don't really seem to be steps.
Yeah. But they're more concepts to be kind of working as your framework,
compass points.
I wouldn't have thought of courage in this way, but I like how it focuses on courage is a way for us to further develop ourselves and our relationships with other people and our abilities to work with people toward common good even. So I think at first when I was thinking of him maybe as an entrepreneur and helping people maybe more in that space, I often think of how can you make more money and how can you be successful? But when you talked about more of the details, I think it's really more about how can you connect and ethically interact with people to produce more productivity, more meaning, more positive outcomes for everyone.
Well, that would make sense, I guess, if he describes himself as an ethicist.
Mm-hmm. For me, listening to you describe this, it's just a different way of thinking about courage. I think often when I think of the word courage, it's just like, how are you going to toughen yourself, steel yourself to do things versus courage to really be open and embracing and connecting in a non-biased way to strengthen your own abilities and abilities of others. So it sounds like it's really a positive approach to using courage in a way different than what I would have expected it to be about.
Yes, I guess it's one of those words, isn't it, that has, sort of typical meanings that you'd associate with which I guess is why he mentions, it's not about the typical sort of physical bravery type aspect. It's more to do with, as you say, courage of character and relationships.
And vulnerability.
Yeah. And not being swayed by personal bias. Stepping to one side of that. Stepping outside of things like personal judgment. Which is often easier said than done, of course, because it's very difficult not to bring that into relationships in particular.
Absolutely. And leadership roles, decision-making, professional decision-making, organizational decisions, to really be in that place of, I can't say it with a French accent, but to really come at it from that place of courage, to be open and vulnerable. I think for me, a takeaway from this, and I want to learn more about his work, is I think it's really about self-improvement without being broken. It's not like you need to fix yourself, but how can you really expand your abilities to interact with others, lead, work together. So I think there's something really interesting about this. When you said kind of, and who doesn't want to become a better version of themselves? To me, this isn't, oh, no, Daisy, you've got to be more, do more. This is really about from within expanding our own abilities to connect and listen and use our talents. So I think there's a lot here.
I had a feeling you might be able to give a different perspective to it. Like I say, I sort of sometimes felt like I sort of bumped up against the wrong side of it, but you've helped me see that, maybe I was a bit quick to judge.
Well, I think what helps me is the way this part says it. Like, what do you find in this book? Ways to actually solve tough moral problems and conflicts at their root cause, genuinely help others, model strength, and close the courage gap. I think this person summarized it better than he wrote his own article.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Sounds like I should maybe give the book a read in its entirety. Maybe I should do that this week.
Sounds like a lot of us might benefit.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, until we've both read it and have a new view on it, I hope everyone has a great week, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
You too, Terry. Have a very wonderful week.